Here's a great headline. State superintendent stripping millions in COVID-19 relief money for tutoring programs. Okay, I guess that's accurate, so to speak, but the $40 million that's going to try to recover the learning loss because of COVID sounds like a pretty good way to spend that money. I want to talk about the ESA program again. This is something that is very important. New York City schools reimagine reading this fall to fix the dismal literacy rates. We have been arguing in Arizona for as long as I've been here, and I'm sure this argument goes on all over the country, in states where the quality of education doesn't seem to be as good as it should be. We have been arguing about finances in Arizona for a very long time, and yet, year after year, we find out that Arizona has some of the best schools in the nation. Now, basis schools, and there's arguments about them saying, well, we only keep the best and the brightest, and if you're not good enough and you can't keep up, you're out. And okay, well, nobody argues that Ivy League schools are the best. As a matter of fact, we did a story about Harvard talking about their lack of free speech on campus, but it was called in the story. It was said to be the best, known as one of the best universities, one of the best colleges in the entire nation. Their standards are higher. So nobody's ever said, well, you know why Harvard has such good results is because they kick people out and they only take the best of the best. Well, they do that because they can. The point of this conversation has to do with how do you get your child a quality education? It's what every parent should worry about. How do you equip your child with the tools? This is the remarkable thing about it. The tools that you get. And what's great about this tutoring program, before I get to the ESAs, the tutoring program that the superintendent, Tom Horn, is rolling out is for K through 8. If you've got a child that you want tutoring for, I think until 3rd grade, any child can get a tutor. After 3rd grade, grades 3 through 8 or 4 through 8, those kids have got to be lagging in proficiency. But then the parents can request a tutor. Not going to cost the parents anything. Teachers are going to get paid extra. Seems to be a win-win for everyone. The idea is to get these kids equipped. My conversation, and we've got a great podcast that we've started called Amazing Arizonans, and everybody, and I'm bragging about this because of everybody that works on this has really made it a top-notch podcast. And we tell stories of people, and it isn't political, stories of great people in Arizona. And one of them we've talked about is Dr. Michael Crow at Arizona State University. I sat down with one of the podcasts. Please go check it out at KTAR.FM and watch all of them. But the one with Dr. Crow, he talked about learners, and he kind of opened my eyes just a different way. I've never heard anybody, I'm sure you have heard people say it this way, but I hadn't. He said you're supposed to, in schools, K through 12, you're supposed to create good learners. And we see that high school graduation as the end, but he considers it a beginning because then you go on to the next phase of your life to learn what's next, and you go to college to become a master learner. And I thought that was a great way of putting it. When you're in grades K through 8, you're at the basics of learning how to learn. And then when you get in high school, you hone those skills and you become a good learner. You go to college to become a master learner and go beyond that. And every parent is concerned about this. And so when we look at the schools that perform, if it were me, and there's best practices in every industry. Doctors teach other doctors when new techniques in surgery come out in their specialty. They show them this is how this works and why. Come watch me do this. And as much as we, the old joke about surgeons having big egos, one of the things is that they teach each other, that you learn from other people's experience and excellence. And if I were a superintendent, I would be asking thriving schools how they're thriving. You know my relationship with the CTEDs, with the Career Technical Education Districts. If I were someone that ran those schools or someone that was in any kind of a superintendent's position, I'd be calling out Chad Wilson from EVIT. And I'd be asking him, what are you guys doing? How are you growing? You're in the East Valley Institute of Technology, when some of the school districts in the East Valley are actually shrinking. Even though the population's going up, they're shrinking a little bit. You're growing by leaps and bounds. What is it you're doing? If I'm running the basis schools, I would want to talk to that superintendent or those principals, and I want to find out what it is they're doing that gets such a high standard. So now when it comes to the ESAs, the expansion of the ESA or the Empowerment Scholarship accounts, they've added almost 50,000 students in the past year. This shows the popularity and the need for this. I'm going to go back to a principle with this that I didn't talk about the last time I discussed it, but it's important. The ideal situation for every parent and every child, I would think, and I would say the vast majority of them would be to have your child grow up in a neighborhood school, that they go to school with the same kids they play with in the neighborhoods, and it builds lifelong relationships. There's a convenience of them getting on the bus and going to that school, but there also are relationships that are built. I lived in a little neighborhood called the Villas when I was a kid. I was a Villas kid. I didn't go to Villas Elementary because I moved there and I went right into middle school. But Villas Elementary fed Cypress Lake Middle School that fed Cypress Lake High School. And I still have friends that we call each other Villas kids. I'm 56 years old. You're talking kids from 50 years ago, certainly 45 years ago, that still call each other Villas kids. Being a Cypress Lake Panther is still a thing to us. And the relationships of going to the dances together and testing together and riding the bus together, that's an ideal situation for any parent and any child. The kids you grow up with and you play football with in the front yard, or the kids that you go to school with, and the bonds that are created are lifelong. So any parent right now, these 50,000 new families, this is something where the parents are saying we need choices. The other thing that's been said about this program is, well, some of these are wealthy families that already have their kids in private school, and they're using that tax dollars to offset tuition at a private school. My opinion, I know it's different than a lot of others, is I don't care. You should be able to do whatever you want with the tax dollars. And that's just my opinion. You pay the taxes, so much is allotted for your child. If you can offset the difference in that tuition with your own money and you could subsidize your child's education, God bless you, that's what the tax dollars are for, education. Other people disagree with that. But for the families, this is the desegregation of the 21st century. Kids of every color that are poor kids, working class kids, where they've had no options, now have options. Working class families should be screaming how happy they are about this. And I hope that they continue to do it.